All right, so I'm literally, yes, I'm having your lunch and then the talk. So it gives me a reason to go fast. I never had a problem with that. So thank you for the nice introduction, Joseph. So here's something that, my talk is actually this, conversation tutors and experience API. By the way, when do I have to stop?
So we budget 55 to 60 minutes, 12 plus questions.
Okay, so okay, so when I was proposing several talks, and then this is the combination that you prefer. So I'm trying to say how can we put this in perspective. So I was able to do that. First, I want to acknowledge that the work that we have involved almost 20 years. It's 18 years from now. It's 99 that we were being worked with ADL. So we actually have wonderful centers or publishing level ADL. And the second one, of course, we had the tutors, we had the systems, University of Memphis with a lot of people. And of course, some of them were young. This is Gracer, Carl, and Andrew, and that just information. And then, of course, this work that I'm talking about is actually funded by quite a few agencies that in the US. So here's what I'm going to talk about. I think I'm going to finish this one before 15 minutes, so we can enjoy some questions. In the effort of putting this thing together, conversational tutor system plus ALSET API, how can we put that together? So I'm going to introduce some of this, I call the ALTTAI framework, a brief outline. So ALTTAI is actually the group of people that I'm involved with, ADL, and then IIS, and University of Memphis. We have some general kind of framework and how can we put our work in perspective. It's basically within the domain, within the framework of advanced learning theories, technologies, applications, and impact. So I'll try to elaborate this to tutor, conversation tutor, and API within this framework. Well, basically, this ALTTAI, it's the research focus. That's what we're really focused on. It's actually looking at a micro interaction mechanisms between human learner and learning content. That's what we do. If you're thinking about tutor, human tutor or computer tutor, we always try to bring learners and learning content together. And then the way that we develop theorizing, implement technology, it's actually trying to make the best or optimize the effect as a function of learners, content, environment, and procedure. So that's why our research focus. But this research focus actually can be put into something that I call the research and development framework. So I have this framework that's called a symmetric framework. It's human learners and the learning content are symmetric in the context of learning environments and processes. This is actually, it's actually very intuitive if you think about it. We have software in different versions. Why do we have different versions? Because our developer actually learn from learner and then make a change. Of course, learners changing their learning knowledge structure by interaction with the content. The only difference is that the time or time scale or process is different. So we have our software in versions. But it's not really like human, like we learn in a very, very instant basis. Okay, so that's I will come back to this one. Okay, so our theories, of course, as you know, that I'm from the background of mathematics and then cognitive psychology and blah blah blah. So that's why the theory behind, of course, there's technology. You have data. What we're talking about today is actually API is actually data centered. And the text analysis, you can have like root or comatrix or semantic representation analysis I mentioned yesterday, and also advanced learning environment, tutor systems, develop different technologies, different platforms. So that's technology, and we have a lot of applications. Basically, by the way, if you don't have the applications, the fundamental system give you millions of dollars. By the way, we were so lucky to have accumulated probably over $35 million in the last 20 years. So the level of application. Now, with those applications, and then we were able to basically implement those theories those technologies actually make it possible to be enhanced. Yesterday when we were in the dinner, we talked about the Great Challenge. This is actually the Great Challenge project we have. We led from the ONR Ready Challenge instead, but actually enhance learning from mathematics. And of course, this is something that Terry was talking about. So right now, everybody interested in team learning rather than not only just one-on-one. Instead, one interaction is one too many or many to one, or many too many. So this is our approach. Actually, we're doing an experiment, and one of my students did the best poster presentation that AI. Okay, so this happening, and it impacts. So we actually try to do evidence study because that's the final say that you need to get money from the agency. So actually, this is actually PAL 3 from the ONR, and this is the RL that the Army Research Lab project we do, and also this is another Army Research project. And this one actually is not an Army Research project. It's one of those agencies from the Army that we create a virtual environment to teach first responders to how to triage victims in a mass casualty scenario. And this is a contact map that actually developed, collaboratively with Army Research Lab. And then for literature, we develop, we have a framework. This is actually a collection of books that we publish every year. Some of our colleagues here actually involved in this advisory board or workshop, really looking at ITS as a general framework. And then, of course, we think that our effort ends up saving lives. So now let's come back. Let's just come back, focus on this one, interaction mechanisms, and also the symmetry. Now, I just want to make sure that the message comes across. Why we call the symmetry? Okay? This is not very, very strange idea. It's actually very, very intuitive. I want to show you this one. Okay? If you remember, this, you probably say, oh, here, this is Roche model, right? Roche model, and one parameter is really measure the identity, and then another parameter measures the subject ability, right? If you think about this, is actually symmetric. If you really inverse this response matrix, you can evaluate item and evaluate the subject work. In the formula, they're almost symmetric. Now, the key, the symmetry here is you actually have the same data set that simultaneously estimate the two set of parameters. So the idea is, what happens if you actually have the same data that capture both learner and the learning system and analyze together and then feedback at the same time? And that will be the key for the symmetry. If you agree this is the symmetry for the item, the test questions versus testers, if you agree this is the symmetry that we talked about, the symmetry of understanding the learning systems is intuitive. Okay, so that's why I want to say that unify the data structure simultaneously capture the system information and learner information, and then build utilities, feedback in real time in your system. That is the key to achieve symmetry. So that's the idea. So with that in mind, that the conversation idea that makes it just one example how we achieve such symmetry and we use to study the interaction mechanisms between the learner and content. Okay, so that's like a background. Okay, take about 12 minutes for that. So now let's talk about the interacting mechanisms between the learner and the content. Okay. Now this is actually very famous picture or diagram of how micro dialogue between learner and a tutor. Okay, this is actually summarized by hundreds of hours of tutoring sessions between senior students tutoring freshmen statistics. Glaser and his student, Matthew Percy, that summarized this one way back in the early 90s. Basically, the idea is the tutor propose or ask the student a question. And then from that time on, based on the detected misconception or missing expected answers, then the student, the tutor and student carry on a very, very fine-tuned dialogue. Okay, this one is called expectation misconception tailored dialogue. This is really at the lower level. You know, how, by the way, we have one model that means natural language is universal interface. No matter how advanced you have technology you have, conversations or dialogues will trump everything. That's why we talked about the earlier talks, we talked about discussions, we talked about never really have technology. Technology make it easier. Final interaction is language. That's why at least we believe in that. That's why we try to make the conversation is really the agent carry on. You know, your exchange between learner and content, and then implement the mechanism, then optimize learning. So this is EMG. With this one, we were able to develop a lot of systems. A lot of systems that more system is more enough for agency to give us $35 million. Okay, every single one of them with different domains, with physics, computer literacy, biology, you name it, because that specific ENT is content generic. Okay, you can ask the question, what is medium length, right? Sure, big philosophical question. You also can ask, what is the purpose of you can read, in the chair? You can even ask all questions, all different levels. The only difference is how can you specify what is the expected answer and what is the expected or commonly, demonstrated or manifested expected misconceptions. Okay, so we build a system. So this is the evaluation. We find that by having this, by asking deep reasoning questions, actually our tutor almost like an expert tutor, but much better to read the book or to just to repeat the episode of learning that originally give rise to the misconceptions. So this is also duty. Okay, so since I'm going to try to do that, there are examples. There are examples that if I have time, actually I have links at the end. If I go faster, I'll give you examples. So this one actually is the example that information delivery. How can you, for example, if the student has no idea, okay, you write out a lot of rules. You can just, I shoot myself over here a movie, right? I think I'm very, very, eloquent and I'm very, very easy to convince people. But you remember that every time you say something, you have to the intended audience is a reader in mind. Absolutely true that somebody will watch. Somebody will feel this is too easy, right? So having a dynamic kind of presentation is almost absolutely necessary. Pay those different needs. And also another key thing is when you do MOOC, for example, if you elaborate a concept, okay, most of the professors without interaction, you basically just answer MOOC questions. Okay? You can ask very, very stupid question and criticize yourself or something like that. You can. But the problem is if the learner is not careful enough, you probably have a danger of introducing misconceptions because they probably just mess up. This is coming to the learner. Right? So having this kind of dynamic kind of presentation, you actually can assign roles for each one of the characters. Right now, our first try is this is like a teacher, and this is like a smarty pants. This is probably some area that have no idea, and this one is like shaper. So in other words, you strategically putting information on each one of those persons, so student knows, oh, somebody talking about this person must be wrong. So that's the first approach, right? That's the first one. Of course, then this is another one that we have. So this is actually the extension of the project we have for the US online chapters. That we have the forum. We firstly emphasize that the role of teacher, okay, is really help students understand what they learn. Even the best professors, they probably do not write book all the time, but they are very good at making any book a best teaching material to the student. So in other words, so in order to get money, we have 4 ways to slogan. I said, we will not reproduce the content. We are not smarter than those in the field that study a lot of time, producing a lot of content. We are not smarter than them. Okay, we only enhance the best material. The agency is so happy because they already invest millions of dollars. Oh, that's great. We actually can, bootstrap what we have. So what we get is, okay, let's consider the following. This one is really valuable. And we won the very challenge. We say we use IPS. We call it SCO, a shareable content object. We say we use SCO as a portable IPS module to teach reading comprehension instead. Okay, that's how it's mouthful. But the idea is we identify the most efficient or most widely used piece of content, like explaining mathematics. Okay, we understand as we observe that students, if they do not have a very good skill of reading science, they really do not know why certain parts are. What is the goal of each certain parts? So I was able to hire a lot of interns to identify the critical hotspots in each other in our selected problems, and we vary interactions, we vary files, and then we work the learner through. This is also a live example issue. So to that way, we actually engage them with reading comprehension in mathematics. And this is also a tutoring system that teaches statistics because I have implemented this one in my stats class, but we can pick it up. Okay. This is another one, of course, where in Singapore, children have a higher population of learning, no Chinese. And then one of my colleagues, Carl, is actually, he liked my course. I said, okay, why are you producing one for teaching Chinese how to appreciate words? So you get one here, you can use it. Okay, so that's the conversation tutor. The idea is conversation or natural language is a universal interface, okay, that even before technology, way back thousands of years ago, cultural or our teaching from generation to generation use conversation, use words, right? In other words, we can do without technology. By now, and also, we should have enough technology that we really deliver everything, everybody at home. Why we come together? Because we converse, right? Our conversation actually have a lot of things. You have an emotion, you're looking at them, you stare at them, people, and remember, the number one is the conversation is a trump everything. Second one is producing conversation tutor is not necessarily easy. Yesterday, or day before yesterday, I did a tutorial. What is the most efficient way of carrying conversations in the context of learning? Even not in the context of learning, you probably find somebody's bored, right? You find somebody's very, very polite, very, very passionate to talk to, right? In other words, the conversation is hard. The same applies to learning. Okay, so the day before yesterday, I was talking about how can you ask good questions. So there are 16 different kinds of questions that you can ask on a single fact. And then only give reasoning questions that you can make students think. Okay? So based on that, and then have the ENT, it's worse. And also the conversational tutor, the SCO idea, it's actually have a deeper philosophical roots. I think it's more appropriate for I would say the Oriental cultural perspective. If you remember the ITS, the very famous ITS in Russia, in the US, and others, they named their ITS named Plato. Okay, the giants who lost or Aristotle, errors, right? They think that the tutor is supposed to know it, right? But I think that in the Oriental culture, you learn from anybody, right? There's a silence reviewers. In other words, if you go, you hang out with another three people, you will find something you can learn. So that's very, very, very important. So the way that we have to relate to this one, is that the way that we build the tutor system, never pretend that we know everything about the world. Okay? And then also, we try to do the mini battle. The EMT scenario is actually very, very much better because the EMT, remember, even you said this is very, very generic, but in that conversation, it's a built-in symmetry, asymmetry. Because teacher asks the student do not ask the teacher. So in other words, if I'm a tutor, you need to answer my question. If you ask me a question, I can say no. I say, oh, I'm not teaching this. Okay? So that actually gives a unique advantage of tutoring. Even in this way, that actually you do not have to expose your weakness and then make the student believe you know. Plus, in the example that I have before, the teacher over there is always right, and then all put the wrong things in the other characters. So that's a conversational tutor. I have links at the end of the PowerPoint you can get it and you can try it. And then I made it possible that if you have a Gmail account, you can use it. Okay, now let's talk about experience API. Okay, the reason I kind of feel comfortable talking about XAPI because I've been affiliated with Splunk for many years, actually since '99. We had quite a few projects. And then University of Memphis, we have Workforce ADO Collab, and then we have the ITS Center for ADL, and now we're a partnership lab. Okay. So for those of you that actually not familiar with ADL, and ADL is actually whether so somebody still think that ADL is the grandfather of Boost because in early 97. And IDA, Institute of Defense Analysis, is a think tank for the Secretary of Defense in the US. They decided, okay, now everywhere, every branch is producing content, let's try to produce a standard. So, and then with that standard actually boosted the adoption of popularity of online distributed learning. Of course, later you have other, like companies or like the edX or university or Israel that actually use them. Without the initiative, it is probably going to be 2 years before we get on this. Now, the ADL, the mission is actually trying to provide high quality education, training, formal learning, and just-in-time support, and again, with the needs and deliver cost efficiently, anytime, anywhere. Now, this one actually, it's a you can really find those things that by the way, this was actually initially started in '97. Okay, so we're still using the same thing. So ADL, again, if you do not know about ADL, there are a lot of things that you can get. Everything that we do, you probably can find the traces either from their current research focus or their DAAs. And then, for example, in this case, we have the community of practice and international collaboration. That's there like 13 national partnership labs that we meet on a regular basis. Okay, and also we have the community practice that actually really cater to the specific kind of domain. Okay, so this is the profile of research. I would love to spend more time on introducing every single one of them. For example, I have an entire open source of conference management, and then really looking at the way that the learners, like soldiers, what is their skill, what is their knowledge, what is they call it KSA kind of thing, and ultimately we send it to attitude and the needs. In other words, they have really wonderful set of tools, and every single one of them are open source. Okay, so this is community practice. In other words, now you have the standard, either in SCORM or actually now we talk about, they actually have a specific area of practice. For example, this one is video, XA graphical video. So if you have a video-based learning, how can you use XA capture data? Of course, I'm ahead of time for my cutoff. I'm going to tell what those XA is, but this is a community practice. Feel free to go in and actually read up what is out there. Okay, so if you realize in the U.S. this was started as an initiative in '97. Okay, for an initiative to survive over 20 years in the U.S. government, they have done something right. Okay, you have to read it. You have to read it. Otherwise, it's just, somebody will replace it, right? So this is international kind of, international ones. So actually we have the ASU and we have the Memphis and we have Wisconsin Madison plus a lot of other countries like New Zealand countries, New Zealand and other places. Okay. Basically, ADL helped create a standards since 2000, which is the first one version of school, until right now they have like what we know as XAPI, but those are a lot of other standards that ADL have. Okay, so why the standards? This is probably preaching to the choir. Everybody probably know. So standards actually help us. If you're as old as I am, you remember some that before we said, oh, this one is not going to work. You need graphic format for the pictures and then others. And of course, if you right now, we probably just need two kind of USB, kind of things, right? Like a mini USB or a USB thing. But before, every time you switch a phone, you have to get another phone, power. And then the Wi-Fi and other things is actually due to the unified standard. And the standards is actually an indication of the maturity of the field. Okay, so ADL actually serving that. And then, you can say that, once you have a standard, you can label supply chain. So people have started producing things, and then people, there is a lot of advantage. And then, of course, you can have standard practice. After the, even the ethic standards are kind of, standard for the research. There's one example that I just want to show how we put the standard on. Okay, this is very, very interesting. So the legend says, okay, the road or the railway, and with it, the right of the railway is really defined by the wagon, how wide the wagon is, because they want to do that. And then the width of the wagon is actually based on how regular, how big are 2 or 3 horses, how wide their axis. Okay? Now you end up, so in other words, it's all big because of those. There's no standard. It's very popular, changing the standard. So the size of the railway, okay, is also depending on this. You can trace back all the way to the size of the horse, axis. And the one the U.S. are trying to ship their space shuttle. Okay, how big is the space shuttle thing? You have to depend on the size of the railway. You're going to switch from the transfer point to another place, right? Now you trace back, it's actually our space shuttle. The size of the space shuttle was originally related to the size of the horse axis. That is how standards really go. In other words, if you do that thing right, it's going to have a long-term impact. So that's just this joke that you can have. Okay, so now let's talk about what is the standard for learning. In 2009, I was the president of SCIP, Society for Computer Psychology. I supposed to give a presentation address. And I said, well, here, let's learn how to do experimental psychology. And that year, there were about 1,500 papers in psychonomics. okay? And I trace back every year about anywhere from 1,500 to about 2,000 papers. A lot of people duplicate their results. In order to really show what they have done right, they rerun some of the experiments. Okay? Why? Because they cannot analyze the previous experiment anymore, because their data is not available. Okay? So I proposed this one. I said, well, if we want to capture what happened for the student learning, this pretty much capture a lot of very high percentage of actions. Who responds? Let's talk about in the experimental psychology response to the student. Right? So who responds to what, and at what time, and which condition? And then of course, how do you measure it? Okay, so this pretty much captures, at least in a experimental psychology behavior, how you respond to stimuli, and then this bunch of metadata. You will respond to the specific stimuli, and then your metadata for who this participants is. Okay, and also respond, which is the verb. What the respond to what? So what kind of word? So this one actually was way back. That we were talking about within the community of society of computer psychology. But ALTTAI basically make this one a standard, make this statement standard. Now you can see how generic it is. If you can come up with an example in the domain of learning, yesterday we talked about in the theater, this basically is a behavior. I will try to make this one as a generic. No theory behind it. It's a generic behavior capture data. It's more meaningful. So the idea at that time, because I had a very, very dear colleague who passed away, and I lost a lot of data because somehow I would get on the retrieve password and it was gone. That was so painful. And I said, what happened if I can just analyze my data when I retire, and the data I would see just like the data experiment one this? How can that happen? We have to save the data as much as possible, no detail. Okay, so that was there. So the XAPI is actually for that purpose. Okay, the XAPI is very, very simple. For those of you who do not know, it's just three things. One is active, who. Another one is verb. What do you do? The third one is activity. Okay? So the three things, if you have those three things, and then there's something called the extension of further describe your environment. So that's how easy it is. Okay? Now, then you say, well, how can we get the verbs? Now, the verb is actually very, very special. That's why we have a community practice. Every community group practice, they actually have their own set of verbs. Okay. For example, when I'm doing this, just online learning, they have a verb like a task. Okay. Now, if you actually do the video kind of learning, you actually have a special verb like a skip. Okay, well, remember, that's really specific for those. And then other verbs in the simulation environment. Okay, so this is just the example we'll get to see. So this is actually the XAPI statement that actually for so simple it's just JSON. Okay, so do this. And then it is actually very relatively easy to really make it work for you. Okay, if you want to make your own XAPI, like a record store, this GitHub site gives you almost just about everything that you can use. Okay, you can do, or you can do some of this. You can have a sandbox that you can test out, and they say, okay, now I can my system export to the XAPI and the state, and then you can do it on your own. Okay, so and then the key. The two keys on XAPI. One is it's just that standard. It's the triplets. Okay, the actor, verb, and activity. The other one is actually the learning records. You have a common location to really get everything that the student did. Okay. Now I want you to think about the symmetry that we are talking about. Number of items, every item trying by n participants. You have the common place to say data dimensions. You actually can ask them both. Item capability and then the subjectivity. This ALTTAI in the record store, just in the symmetry kind of framework, serving that purpose. So, ALTTAI is basically unified messaging that take record of the learning activities. It's made it possible and easy for you to use the data mining. Okay, you can have well, actually, you can consider educational data mining without having common data, like understandable data source. You probably have a hard time doing it. But in this case, you have specific verb and then specific actor and the activities defined. You basically, you're not doing data mining. You are doing data harvest. Your data farming. You build the seeds in your data. You go back. So in other words, it's really much easier. And of course, the learning reports to help both learn ideas and make it possible for you to learn the symmetry framework. Okay. So as an example, that the last one I want to talk about is how the ALTTAI enabled scope. Okay. And that is in generic is that you can use ALTTAI or whatever data capture mechanism enable your learning system. So this one is an example. It's ALTTAI enabled scope, and then so this is an example that maybe I will give some time for the real example. So you're interacting with this system, and then you actually can capture. Now this one is actually the learning records that I have that I capture not only the learner's action, also the system action. Remember, in my symmetry, I never differentially treat learner and IGs. They're the same. In my system, they're symmetric. So in the learning record store, you can find actions. You can find actions of the learner, and also you can find actions of the system. Okay. So to summarize, so scope is example of learning content, and also it's in this case is example of conversation-based tutoring, and then the interaction skill is natural language. Okay, human learner and learner content interaction data stored in the LRS, and then in the exit statement, and then that made it possible for the symmetry. So that's a summary, and I just have a couple things that I want you to just information. So for you, if you want to know more about ALTTAI, okay, in about 9 days in Washington, D.C., there was something called the IFEST, Implementation Fest. Actually, 3 days focused on ALTTAI and the systems. So that's why something if you want to do, if you go back or if you still have time to reverse your flight, you can do that. And then that is one of the yearly events for ADL that actually help everybody understand. Second one is actually, remember the slogan of ALTTAI. It's an event that I organize every year. It's a consortium that we do in Taiwan. That we have a week-long activity talk about the things the four kind of pillars of the activity. Okay, this one is actually the one that I'm involved from Central China Global University. They just awarded National Laboratory for Technology of Big Data Application in Education. They have 80 positions open and need to be filled in 3 years. Okay, so if you have any questions, interest, let me know. So I am, to help you get your lunch really early.
And actually, let's take questions, but that's actually good because I was informed that under some regulations, if food is doing on site, you must just leave it too long. So
okay. Yeah.
What questions?
ALTTAI logging format with triplets relate to LearnSphere and the different data formats that are going into LearnSphere?
Good question. Good question. LearnSphere, as John was talking about in day before yesterday and also today, yesterday, it's actually one I would say when it was started, correctly, had a specific learning system in mind. Algebra, the cognitive learning algebra, right? At least serving the purpose of saving storing the data. So over there, in order to use it, you actually need to have something go beyond the data. You need to identify what is the knowledge component, right? So it's not everybody can easily use LearnSphere. My experience, I can input ALTTAI system use LearnSphere, but I have to specify, combine the verb with the activity plus extension to identify this specific statement indicating the student passing or fail or the specific cases. And then LearnSphere help me to draw the curves. ALTTAI has no theories, okay? Other than you indicate what the student behavior, the observed behavior, like a attempt, okay, like a pass, a fail, or a skip. It's almost entirely, from the learner perspective, observed behavior, not over here. Now, they say, what is the use? The use is actually using this raw data to help to provide analysis and learning analytics on top of what's going on in a lot of videos. Okay, that's just one difference. Another difference is this ALTTAI is intended to be a standard. LearnSphere, correct me if I'm wrong, it was originally not made to be a standard for all the learning systems, but probably need to be a standard for ITS. But ALTTAI is not just right. And then the format is also, ALTTAI is really in JSON, like a very freestyle kind of database. LearnSphere, I think, is focused more on square tables, like you exactly use SPSS.
So one of the things I get that is triplets. The timestamp is assumed that the timestamp is a fourth.
Yeah, the timestamp is really it's buried in there. The timestamp is just one thing. But the verb, if I can go to that, well, the verb actually is dictionaries. You actually can define a verb by a word match, or you can define a verb by your own practice, own area of practice.
So inside the verb is where the timestamp is clicked at this time.
Well, basically each statement will have a timestamp. So that is not a variable. Well, it is a variable, but it's a fixture. I'm not sure what I would remember, time is built in. The time is built in. Yeah.
So I'll follow up with a couple things. It's the data shop portion of LearnSphere was originally intended to take tutor data and transaction data. But in the case of that data source or even Discourse DB and some of the others, it's actually fairly trivial to turn that into XAPI kind of data because we have that triple built in. It's just our data is a little bit more specific for the tools that we're planning to use that we've built out. I do have some concerns with XAPI and the standards. One of the reasons we did what we did is we needed to get something done. You have these big committees, sometimes it takes 20 years to build around what is a standard. And even now, we're just starting to see these communities and practices publishing these verbs. But I'm still super concerned about how others interpret then those verbs and store the data, because it's very open. I can store my verbs of what skip means, and you may have a very different understanding of what skip means in terms of that video data that you mentioned. And it gets even worse when you start bringing in for-profit companies that have a benefit to obfuscate their data so other people can't use it and analyze it. And so there's definitely still some issues to work out. I love the idea of standards, but again, I've been on so many boards and, trying to figure out the little nitty gritty details of that 10% of the things that don't fit. At some point you just have to say, let's get something that'll work. But in terms of like sharing the data, it makes a nice, it is nice in some ways, but again, the devil's in the details, as I think you're saying, like when you dig down into that JSON, so many things could experience and break out.
I think this is fair comments. So far, I think that if you look at what ALTTAI, that statement number, you can make your own experts in Chinese version of profile for people who have different languages. So the only requirement is whatever you define over there, that is defined somewhere. Okay, you can use skip for your purpose. I can use mine. That's nice. You use mine. I have specific places I can trace what it is. Okay, so as a standard, making a standard is non-trivial, right? We have to make it possible for people to interpret, to adapt to their own. Okay, and also the way the XAPI does is not only for learning like a formal learning data. In other words, if you know that 70-20 kind of division, everything we have for learning data is 90%, where 70% are actually other kind of formal learning or other kind of active opposite that actually help you to learn knowledge, right? Okay, knowledge. So the whole cycle or the whole thing is really says, what if we want to have a lifelong learning value? What is the data structure help you or make it possible for you to track not only the one you interact with on the computer? Okay, that is what, and also they have the concept right now. So we talk about a classroom, it's going to be gone, which is totally going to be gone, and blended learning is going to be gone because they talk about synthetic learning. That any device, anything that you do can serve the role of educating, and then that connected to the learning reference store with its own definition of verbs activities. So when we do this one, we have to get out of the mindset of, hey, I have a computer, therefore I'm recording my data. No, that's not the case. For that reason, a more generic definition is better than the middle one. Now, in terms of doing research, you can have your own. There's no questions. But in order to have like a system-wide, like a mandatory or UD-wide of learning reference store, we just cannot pinpoint exactly what definitions are. Okay.
It's just to add maybe some international context. When you see, to add some international context into a handsome point, when you see Department of Defense, you might wonder, well, why is this getting authentication? And just a reminder, Department of Defense is a workforce. There are millions of people. And so often these things are things like, if we can only get sailors to put things away more quickly into their funds, if we can mechanics do it more quickly, we'd save millions of dollars a year. So that's just kind of some of the context of why this happens. And when I've spoken to AEL, like the corporate training conferences, like even Yale, what they point out is that NSF has a tiny budget compared to Department of Defense, but also NSF has a shorter horizon. Department of Defense is one of the only people who says, well, 50 years from now, we're going to be around. We need standards like this to have a long kind of trajectory. So just a comment, you can contradict me.
I'm not contradicting, but only just to add another thing. So the military obviously is really interested in training. Also, there are military academies, so their own version of colleges. But in addition to that, people in the military have children who are in military schools, and they care about education in those schools as well. I actually only became really aware of that at a certain time when the DoD or DARPA was offering grants for educational games for like second graders, and I was like, why do they care? And it turned out that it's because of the military schools for kids of military people. They're concerned about those, not surprisingly, and it really works out to our advantage. So when you see these huge military budgets, you think, oh, they're using all this money to build bombs and pay for, whatever, but actually some of it is coming to our graduate students, and isn't that a better use of, I shouldn't say that in a recording message, never mind.
I think it's the first thing is that U.S. has They're actually taking the high school students, submitting high school students, and then as their major figures of their workforce. So they said, we have better educated our ordinary graduate students, so our enlisted people will have a willingness to spend less money to train them. So that's to save their money. So they actually have they took big surveys, whether it is okay, we make all the high school students more, skillful in terms of STEM, they have a better, workforce in 5 years. I also have this, the links at the end of this slide that you.
Right, and Xiangen, you'll be around for questions to the break, right?
Yeah.
Also, I might mispronounce your name, Xiangen. How would you say it properly?
Fair enough.
I've been saying Xiangen name for years, but I can't count on how people say it differently. So, okay. All right, well, thanks so much, Evan. So we have lunch outside. We'll come back in 50 to 60 minutes. Thanks.